has been a bad few week stretch for Jim Comey's daughter. She was just fired by the DOJ. She's known for a couple things. She just lost the Diddy case, of course, and she was Jeffrey Epstein's prosecutor. So the daughter of the former FBI director, James Comey, she's a veteran federal prosecutor, worked on these cases. Maurine Comey is fired. So this is sending tongues a-wagging as the internet personalities and others in this show has asked questions about what happened with the files, why did we overpromise and underdeliver? But the president has made his opinion on this very clear over the last couple of days. We're going to continue to cover this. And we also have big developments in the Biden cover-up, not a bad few week stretch for Jim Comey's daughter. She was just fired by the DOJ. She's known for a couple things. She just lost the Diddy case, of course, and she was Jeffrey Epstein's prosecutor. So the daughter of the former FBI director, James Comey, she's a veteran federal prosecutor, worked on these cases. Maurine Comey is fired. So this is sending tongues a-wagging as the internet personalities and others in this show has asked questions about what happened with the files, why did we overpromise and underdeliver? But the president has made his opinion on this very clear over the last couple of days. We're going to continue to cover this. And we also have big developments in the Biden cover-up, not exactly a household name, but inside the Beltway. They dubbed him Dr. Jill's work husband. Anthony Bernal appeared today before the House Oversight Committee. This is what went down.
Did you ever advise President Joe Biden to pardon his son, Hunter Biden?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question pursuant to my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution.
Was President Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question.
Did President Joe Biden ever instruct you to lie regarding his health at any time, including but not limited in your testimony to Congress today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer the question.
Now, why would Bernal not want to share his brilliant insights and memories of all the great work Joe Biden did? Here with me on a take on this and this latest news about Comey's daughter, Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, I know you sat through that deposition today, but first, your reaction to the breaking news. Comey's daughter out, Pam Bondi, says, we don't need your services anymore.
Well, it's about time. She hasn't really done that good of a job. And at the end of the day, President Trump wants results from every part of the administration, including the Department of Justice.
You don't think it has anything to do with Epstein?
No, I don't think so.
What's your response to all the, there are a lot of influencers, and of course on this show we've asked for answers about the Epstein file. It looks like they overpromised what was actually in the files. There's not much in the file, or as Alan Dershowitz said, there are no files. What do you think about all this?
Look, at the end of the day, I think you got to have transparency in this whole deal. A lot has been made about what
was on the tapes,
what
right?
was on the tapes, what was Jeffrey Epstein doing, what happened in the jail. Like, I know Cash Patel, know Dan Bongino, a ton of respect for both of those gentlemen, Pam Bondi as well. I'm skeptical about, whether it was suicide or he killed himself. But I think as the more information comes out, I think being transparent with the American people is the way to go.
Do you think the president will just at some point just say, just to stop the speculation, put it all out there? But he seems to say people who are pushing for this aren't really supporters anymore, which I think there are a lot of his supporters who just want the answers.
Well, I think potentially, but look, I would say look at it from the president's perspective. He is on a winning streak of delivering for the American people time after time after time again. You want to talk foreign policy, domestic policy, everything in between. He's doing his job. And so I think for everybody in the media circles and in the social media circles to be caught up in Epstein, he's like, wait a minute, but we're stepping on all the great things that we are doing for the American
people. Right, and I think, look, running the country and governing is different from hosting a cable show or hosting a podcast.
That's right, that's right.
It's a different job. And it's not easy. And look, I always think the president usually ends up at the right spot here. So we'll see how this plays out. What do you think of this? What happened with this testimony today by Bernal?
I mean, look, this is ridiculous. You have the right-hand man for Jill Biden, who knows everything. He comes in, pleads the fifth. The doctor came in last week, he pleads the fifth. All this tells me is that we do have a cover-up. This is the greatest political scandal in presidential history. This is bigger than Watergate, bigger than all that stuff, because you had aides to the president or his family were actually directing policy and signing off on items that are critical to the future of this country, and not the president of the United States.
And they're all lawyering up, Congressman.
Absolutely, they're lawyering.
Great
I say bring them all in.
Great job. But we'll let the people take their own conclusions after watching Bernal take the fifth multiple times.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Congressman.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey.
The president's talk about this being a Democratic hoax doesn't seem to hold a lot of water tonight, even with his own supporters.
Well, what seems to be, look, that Truth Social post that he did this morning was extremely confusing, and it's very clear what, he is trying to suggest, backfill this essentially, that anybody who raises questions about this now, that it was some kind of a setup by Democrats or by Obama, even though Jeffrey Epstein, or Joe Biden, even though Jeffrey Epstein died in jail when Donald Trump was president last time. I mean, there's a reason that you are seeing people like Mike Flynn say this just doesn't make sense. It simply doesn't. You are correct that, a decade ago, President Trump was more than happy to raise questions of guilt by association for the Clintons. This was something that his advisors talked about, that his allies talked about. Has he talked about Jeffrey Epstein as much in the interregnum period between his two presidencies as some of his top advisors have? No, but he has populated his administration with people who really made names talking about this. And to now say it doesn't matter, you are seeing an emboldened Congress to some extent calling him out for saying these things.
I wonder what you make of that, because one thing he has made clear is he wants people to stop talking about this. He wants this to stop being a story. And you're seeing the right-wing influencers that he's calling, or like some of his most ardent members in Congress, most ardent supporters, say they still want to hear more. I wonder what you make of that, when typically they fall in line with what he says.
I think there's a couple of things at play, Caitlin. I mean, I think one is, he is a lame duck. I mean, part of why he has tried to hold on to his party so tightly since he took office again was to get things done. He saw what happened in term one when members of his own party were rising against him on various fronts, and so he wanted to pass, the one big beautiful bill, and there were other pieces, there were other things he wanted to accomplish, and generally he has scared members of his party into not speaking out if they were upset with it, or people supported what he was doing. Now you're seeing things like Tom Tillis, who you just played a quote from North Carolina. He's not running again, and so he clearly feels emboldened to speak out. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been speaking out more and more. You may see others. I think time will tell, but it is definitely a notable shift since he came back.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Trump trying to move off the story, I want you to listen to what he said in the Oval Office, where he himself was basically trying to say it's time to move on from this.
I call it the Epstein hoax. It takes a lot of time and effort. Instead of talking about the great achievements we've had, instead of talking about the things we've achieved, we've had tremendous achievement. The scandal you should be talking about is the auto pen, the things that they should be talking about. The big, beautiful bill is one of the greatest pieces of legislation ever in this country. All these things that happened that wouldn't have happened if you had good leadership, and that's what you should be talking about.
Maggie, as you know, the president is typically pretty good at changing the narrative when he wants to, or putting something else out there. Does your reporting show, are you surprised that he's struggling to change it in a way that he typically has not?
I think this one, Caitlin, a couple of things. Number one, Jeffrey Epstein has been a mainstream story for a long time. There were a lot of people who covered issues related to Jeffrey Epstein and the crimes that he committed. He was in prison. His death was very well covered when President Trump was in office the first time. So number one, it's not just a story that takes place, on the internet. This takes place across the board. Number two, you are seeing his allies, advisors, supporters who have gone out there and talked about this and who I think believed that they had his support on this, getting questioned by their own base. And so this is sort of a story of a question of who do you trust? And that is very clear in what he's saying. It's hard to tell people. I mean, again, I said this earlier about his Truth Social post. It strains credibility to suggest that this was, I call this a hoax and therefore it's a hoax. People are clearly feeling as if for their own reasons, whether it is because of the people who listen to their podcasts or because of their voters in the midterms, that they need to make clear that they don't agree with them.
Lastly, we also learned tonight that James Comey's daughter, Maurine Comey, who is a prosecutor in Manhattan, successfully had worked on the cases of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She's been fired abruptly. Our sense is that she wasn't given a specific reason. Do you believe that that's related to what's happening right now? What's your sense of that?
It's hard to ignore the fact that she was involved in some of the cases involving Jeffrey Epstein. Time will tell whether this was the reason why, whether folks suggest that she had something to do with that. As you say, she apparently was not given a specific reason, and Article 2 was cited as, under the powers of Article 2 and the executive branch. She was dismissed. The president has obviously no love for James Comey, but this would, potentially feed into a line of what he is trying to allege as some broader effort that's separate from him.
Yeah. Maggie Haberman, excellent reporting as always. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Up next, my other inside sources, Politico's White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns and CNN's senior correspondent Doni O'Sullivan. And it's great to have you both here to just get your perspective on this. Doni, I kind of just would like for you to walk us through this, because I think one question that some people have is, given Trump himself has peddled conspiracy theories before, what you make of the surprise he has at how attached to this the people who support him the most are, and are not willing to let it go just because he says, stop talking about this.
Yeah, Caitlin, it's absolutely shocking for them. It really is shocking. And I was trying to think of this today in terms of, in MAGA media, there are, many conspiracy theories and objects of fascination come and go. But every day, pretty much, for years, you'll always hear people on those channels, on those platforms, talk about two things. One is the false claim that the 2020 election was stolen. They are still talking and obsessing about that. And secondly is the EPSTEIN Files and everything to do with that. So Trump coming out and saying, just forget about this, I think is so much of a shock that it would be equivalent of him coming out and admitting that the 2020 election wasn't stolen and that conspiracy theory was a hoax. Look, Trump is obviously a master manipulator of media, of social media. And either he is sort of playing dumb here and hoping that this Epstein stuff goes away, or maybe he just genuinely doesn't fully grasp how much he has stoked the conspiracy theory space online for years. I mean, I remember a couple of weeks before the 2020 election, he did an NBC News town hall. He refused to disavow QAnon then. And since then, Media Matters, the liberal watchdog group, said that he has posted more than 1,000 times on Truth Social amplifying QAnon accounts. And so every time people see those sort of accounts, they view that, rightly or wrongly, but they view that as him endorsing this conspiracy theory or Epstein Files, all that sort of stuff. So that is why this is such a big deal for them.
Yeah, I mean, and Dasha, White House officials seem stunned that this is still a massive story and seems to be only growing. I wonder what you're hearing from sources tonight.
I mean, this is new for them. This is really new for Trump. He is not used to not being able to control the news cycle, to change the narrative, to turn the tables. It's usually folks from the opposition that are attacking him. So he either welcomes it and wears it as a badge of honor or somehow flips it around on them. And this is his base. Like, he's not used to being able to fully direct their attentions, their energies, and their passions. So they're really on a back foot here. And I think this is why they're having such a hard time navigating this, because they've gotten attacks from the other side before. They have never seen an uprising like this. And for the people in Trump's camp that are elected officials or influencers, they are stuck between the president and his base. That is a tough place to be, because those are the two things that they are most afraid of. And I don't know which one wins out in the end.
Yeah, and Doni, when it comes to what the MAGA base wants here, what exactly is it that they want uncovered? Is it just names that Jeffrey Epstein had in terms of contacts, or what is it exactly that they're searching for here and hoping that Pam Bondi releases from the Justice Department?
Yeah, I mean, it ranges, but frankly, they're expecting what they were told to expect from people in Trump's orbit for years, right? They want accountability. I mean, for many of them, they were sort of led to believe that what is in those files or what's imagined to be the files is stuff that would incriminate Democrats. That was a big part of the fascination here. I think one other thing to mention here is that, Trump is trying to have a book.
Maurine Comey, daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, has just been fired from her job as federal prosecutor in Manhattan, a position she's held for nearly a decade. Maurine Comey is known for prosecuting someone you might have heard of, that guy, Jeffrey Epstein, and someone else that you might have heard of, Ghislaine Maxwell, seen here with Jeffrey Epstein. According to NBC News, one source familiar with her termination said the reason given was Article 2 of the Constitution, which outlines the president's powers in the Constitution, including his ability to appoint federal officials. Her firing comes as Donald Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi face backlash from MAGA supporters for refusing to release more information about Epstein. This firing also comes as the Trump administration investigates Maurine's father, James Comey, and former CIA Director John Brennan, accusing them of lying to Congress during the probe into Trump's alleged 2016 Russia ties. Christy Greenberg served as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, where she worked with Maurine Comey, and she joins me now. First, just your reaction to the news, Christy.
Just disgust. Just a few weeks ago, I was in the Southern District of New York courtroom where Maurine Comey was giving her rebuttal address in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. I can tell you it was the best rebuttal jury address I've ever heard. It was incredible. She was incredible throughout that trial. Just such command of the courtroom. She is somebody who is really beloved in the Southern District of New York. She's been a advisor of the violent and organized crime units where I worked with her, as well as the public corruption units. She has prosecuted many high-profile cases. She is truly a prosecutor's prosecutor, somebody that people look up to, and this has to not just hit me hard, but all of the people who've worked with her and know how great a prosecutor she is. It has to hit them hard as well today.
I should note that I think part of this Laura Loomer, who I can never quite find the right way to describe her on air, that's sort of fit for air, but she said this back in May. Why does James Comey's daughter still work for the DOJ? Why hasn't Blondie fired her? Blondie being the name she used for Pam Bondi. And here's Charlie Kirk sort of echoing similar sentiments to his audience. Take a listen.
We are your students in dismantling the deep state. And this cancer has been festering in this country for decades. So the boil is the intelligence community. The boil is James Comey is involved in all of this stuff. James Comey's daughter is the prosecutor on the Ghislaine Maxwell case. You think of all the prosecutors that could have been chosen in the federal government. Maurine Comey, I think that's her name, was chosen as the prosecutor on the Maxwell case. Come on.
I mean, what's the conspiracy theory there? Like the woman that actually prosecuted this woman and brought her to justice is the cover-up?
Right. I mean, we're truly in the idiocracy right now, because if you care about prosecuting sex trafficking cases, which is what a number of these individuals say they care about, and that's why they're so obsessed with Jeffrey Epstein and holding his co-conspirators to account. That's exactly what Maurine Comey did. She was the lead prosecutor who held his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell to account. She is serving a prison sentence of 20 years. She was convicted at trial of 5 sex trafficking counts. She is arguably the most preeminent sex trafficking prosecutor in the country right now. So when you ask why hasn't she been fired, that's why, because she gets results, because she is an excellent prosecutor.
One thing here that I think is worth kind of taking a second on, I don't think this is sort of the most pressing, and I think most people don't care about this, but I do, so give me 60 seconds on it. Article 2 of the Constitution does not allow the president to unilaterally get rid of the entire concept of the civil service. Like, the civil service exists for a reason. It was brought about by both a combination of statutes passed by Congress and signed by presidents, as well as findings by the Supreme Court over over a century. What he is asserting here is the president can fire anyone for any reason, anywhere in the government, at any time because of Article 2.
So I have not, it's been reported that apparently Maurine Comey got a letter, and in that letter, Article 2 is what is cited as the basis for his power to fire her. And this goes back to their whole theory of the unitary executive theory, right? That, as you said, that the president has these comprehensive control over the executive branch, its officers, including the power to remove them all. And unfortunately, it seems the Supreme Court sort of, is in agreement with this very expansive view of the executive authority. And we've seen that in a lot of recent Supreme Court cases where the court is kind of chipping away at these protections for civil service employees. It's troubling, and especially when you look at a place like the Department of Justice in the Southern District of New York, where traditionally pre-Trump, it was, it did act independent of the executive, not so much anymore, obviously.
All right, Christy Greenberg, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
President Trump suggesting that the FBI should look into the Epstein case, but not necessarily because of Epstein's actions, but because he says it's a scam pushed by Democrats.
But they ought to look into the Jeffrey Epstein hoax too, because that's another hoax that's frankly put out by the pushing the Republicans and put out by the Democrats.
Just to be specific on timing, Epstein was investigated and arrested during Trump's first term. Now, Trump and Epstein, of course, were once friends. Trump's talked about that in the same circles decades ago. This photograph goes all the way back to 1997 in Mar-a-Lago, so it's a long time ago. And Trump hasn't been accused of any wrongdoing in the Epstein case. Out front now is Jack O'Donnell, the former president and chief operating officer of the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino. Jack, just as all this conversation comes up, we've talked to you many times over the years, you and I, but you worked with Trump in an important period, 1987 to 1990. And I know that's, we talk about a lot of this friendship going back that long. You heard the name Jeffrey Epstein a lot during the time you worked with Trump. Can you tell us about their friendship?
Oh, sure, Aaron. First off, it's laughable that it wasn't a good friendship, if not his best friend during those days. He frequently came down to Atlantic City, the two of them, to attend special events. I heard reference in several conversations, and in one conversation where I had to specifically talk to him about Epstein and his presence in the casino. So it was, it was, in my mind, it was his best friend, from really the time I was there for 4 years. His name was, not constant, but it came up quite a bit.
And you're saying they would, from what you would call, come down to the casino together. Trump has called Epstein a terrific guy, a lot of fun to be with. Now, that was a New York Magazine interview all the way back in 2002, predating any of these any knowledge of Epstein's nefarious actions. More recently, Trump has downplayed his relationship with Epstein. Back in 2019, he said this, and this is right after Jack Epstein was taken into custody.
I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. People in Palm Beach knew him. He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you. I was not a fan of his.
That doesn't really fit with what you're saying.
No, Aaron, it doesn't. One incident that I think kind of, proves their closeness and how much they hung out together. One time on Monday morning, I came in and the commission was waiting. The inspectors were waiting at my office. And Donald and Jeffrey had come into the casino in the wee hours of Sunday morning, 1:30 in the morning. Two buddies. They had three women with them. And the commission was waiting for me because they had determined that the women that they brought down were underage to be on the casino. And when I asked them how they knew that, by the way, one of them was the number 3 ranked tennis player in the world. Okay. And this guy happened to be a tennis fan. And he said, Jack, I know she's 19 years old. Okay. So, you know, and to get on a helicopter with a friend and 3 other people and fly down to Atlantic City, I mean, you can connect those dots. They were pretty
at 1:30 in the morning. And just to be clear, the story, when you say underage for the casino would be 21, right? So not necessarily legally underage girls, right? Not in that case.
No, not in the sense of a minor, so to speak, that's been described with Epstein. They were underage to be in the casino, and they knew for fact that one of them was 19 years old. Nobody carded them, by the way, because either the commission staff or my staff, because they were intimidated to do so. And that's why the commission was actually going to fine me for Donald's discretion. Now, one of the things that they made me do is they made me call him. And I had to, believe it or not, read him the riot act about this action because they gave him a break. Back in those days, and I think even today, the fines are substantial. They can even suspend your license for letting minors in the casino. And I had to call them and say, look, they're giving you a break this time. But if this happens again, the fine is going to be substantial and it's going to be on your head. And oh, by the way, it's not going to look good, you and this guy Epstein coming down here with these young women.
What did he say?
Oh, well, he was shocked that they let him off the hook, first off. He was flabbergasted. He said, I can't believe they're they're not throwing the book at me. Nobody gives me a break. And that really was his reaction. And I did tell him in that conversation, I don't think you should be hanging out with this guy, just so you know, and you certainly shouldn't be doing that in Atlantic City.
All right, Jack O'Donnell, thank you very much. And for all of this and sharing your recollections here. I appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you. So now you hear what Jack had to say. I want to go to the veteran investigative journalist Barry Levine, who is the former executive editor of the National Enquirer. He was in that role for 17 years. The author of The Spider, Inside the Criminal Web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, where he led an exhaustive investigation into Epstein. So, Barry, you hear what Jack had to say. The Jeffrey Epstein case better than almost anyone. So when you take a step back and you look at all this firestorm right now that is out there, what key information is still being withheld from the public?
Well, Aaron, certainly, I first want to say that calling this thing a hoax is such an insult to Jeffrey Epstein's victims. As the Justice Department told us, there's about 1,000 victims who had been abused, and for this to be called a hoax is just horrible. Say that to the woman who swam from his island to escape. Say that to the families of 3 of his victims who have passed on, 1 from suicide, 2 from accidental overdoses. So, I'm absolutely appalled at as how Trump is handling this situation. But there is still so much that we can learn from these files, and I think that. As the speaker said, let's see transparency here, because not only can we learn more about men who were in his circle, who were in his web, as I wrote in my book, who were involved in this, but we can also learn the financial connections of how the money was distributed to him. I mean, it took millions of dollars for him to maintain this operation over 2 decades. And we need to see exactly how the FBI treated this, who they investigated, were there financial crimes here of individuals that need to be looked at.
So just a few moments ago, Barry, before you and I were speaking, just before the show came to air, the federal prosecutor for Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, Maurine Comey, all right, that's her name. Does the name sound familiar? It should, because she happens to be the daughter of the former FBI Director James Comey. Okay, so she was just fired. All right, she was just fired. She is James Comey's daughter. She was the one looking at this case. Let's just take politics out of it, because I know there'll be politics all over this one, right? It'll be flies over a carcass. But you're very familiar with her work. What do you make of her firing?
It is is another situation here in this week of absolutely horrible things that have come out of Trump in terms of this firing that's taken place. She was such an advocate for the victims of sexual abuse. She took part in the successful prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell. She was on the team for the Jeffrey Epstein prosecution in 2019. Just an excellent part of that team in New York and the Southern District. And for this to go down, the circumstances, they're too similar as to what he said about her father. And then you have this result. So it looks to me like it is just she was knocked down because of her dad, and it's sad.
Well, it's important now, you've written the book and done so much on this. It's important that you can talk for the facts of her performance and who she was and what she was doing, and that's what matters. So, Barry, thanks so much. I appreciate your time and you taking the time to talk to me.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. No one in my lifetime has been better than Donald Trump at changing the subject, dictating the news cycle, wiping things from our collective memory. Remember we bombed Iran like 2 weeks ago? Whatever else you can say about him, the man has always been extremely adept at getting the news coverage he wants, or at least about the topics he wants. That is not happening, though, right now. Right now, Donald Trump wants everybody to shut the hell up about his one-time close friend, associate, the late child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, the guy you see there on your screen hanging out with Trump. And yet everything Trump is doing is making people talk about it more. In fact, just an hour or two ago, Donald Trump fired an Epstein prosecutor. That would be Maurine Comey, the daughter of former FBI director and Trump nemesis James Comey. Now, Trump could have a lot of reasons for disliking her, but as Politico noted today, Comey, who'd worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for nearly a decade, prosecuted both Jeffrey Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay? So when Donald Trump's trying to bury the story right now, out of nowhere, in an unprecedented move, presidents don't fire career attorneys, he fired Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell's prosecutor. This is just one in a series of things Trump has done surrounding the Epstein story that have just been really weird. And so now we are seeing a revolt among the MAGA faithful, people who cheered when Trump staffed the Department of Justice and FBI with loyalists who vowed to release the Epstein files to the public. And they were devastated last week when Trump's administration closed the case and told everybody, turns out nothing to see here. None of it made sense because the administration had been hyping this release over and over. Attorney General Pam Bondi was telling anyone who would listen that she had tapes to review, she had a client list to review, that they gave out a binder that was phase one. And it even got weirder because when they announced the case was closed, they also released that raw video from Epstein's prison block the night he killed himself. And that footage, as people noted, appeared to be missing an entire minute. Well, guess it. Get this. According to a new Wired investigation published yesterday, that video is actually missing approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds. So the whole thing's not going away. And Trump is so frustrated by the Epstein backlash from his own political reporters, he is now calling them stupid.
Mr. President, I know you want to move past all this intrigue over the Epstein files, but I do want to ask you to clarify something you said this morning. You said this was all a hoax. Has your Attorney General told you this was a hoax? What evidence have you seen of that?
No, it's not the Attorney General. No, I know it's a hoax. It's started by Democrats. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats. And some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. And so they try and do the Democrats' work. They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago. I'd rather talk about the success we have with the economy, the best we've ever had, and all of the things we've done, including the Middle East. I mean, you see it. Instead, they want to talk about the Epstein hoax. And the sad part is it's people that are really doing the Democrats' work. They're stupid people.
By the way, is there anything more typical of the Trump era than a foreign leader sitting there as Trump rambles about Jeffrey Epstein? So that was Trump expanding on a wild social media post from early this morning, claiming that Democrats' new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into the BS hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 years. Donald Trump, the Republican president, calling Republicans stupid people and past supporters because they believe Trump's campaign promise to release the Epstein files. Surely he couldn't mean that. But he clarified, yes, he did.
You mentioned past supporters when you were talking about the Epstein issue. Does that mean that you're effectively disowning any supporters who are now calling...
I lost a lot of faith in certain people, yeah. I lost, because they got duped by the Democrats.
What? Telling people the case is closed isn't working, so he's defaulting to trying his old playbook where it's all Russia, 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 Comey, Obama hoax. Barack Obama created the Epstein files that he didn't show you, so why would you even want to see them? What could be in them? They're fabricated anyway and they don't exist. What's wrong with you? The thing is, it isn't really working.
If you talk about this, I'm going to excommunicate you. Well, you're not the Pope, bro.
Millions of Americans are not satisfied with what we've been told. And we shouldn't be, because it's been contradictory and insulting to our intelligence every step of the way.
Trump should not be insulting and attacking the people who voted him in and supported him simply because they want answers on this notorious case of a high-profile individual.
Why did they say there was thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible shit? Why did they say that?
I can't reconcile this Donald Trump with the Trump that we're seeing right now, the Trump that is gaslighting the public right now, the Trump that I voted for across multiple elections. The Epstein scandal is definitely terminal cancer to Trump's MAGA movement.
These people believed in Trump, as you saw, in his war on the deep state, and now they're wondering why Trump has changed his tune, including disgraced former Trump National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. In a long post on social media today, Flynn practically begged Trump to change tactics and release more Epstein files. Quote, if there are elites inside of our country that committed crimes against children, shame on them, and they must be held accountable. Even Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson has, at least rhetorically, in his words, if not his actions, split from Trump on the Epstein case.
I agree with the sentiment that we need to put it out there. And you know, Pam Bondi, I don't know, when she originally made the statement, I think she was talking about documents, as I understood it, they were on her desk. I don't know that she was specific about a list or whatever, but she needs to come forward and explain that to everybody.
That was just yesterday, though on the same day, Johnson and fellow Republicans blocked a Democratic proposal that would have forced the DOJ to publish its Epstein files online. But again, Trump can't stop talking about Epstein and posting about Epstein, even as he wishes everybody else would. As longtime political journalist Josh Marshall put it on social media, this stuff is seriously baffling. It's like someone went to Trump and said, dude, you have to convince everybody you are 100% guilty. Again, Trump has always been able to move on from a bad news cycle before, often by creating some new bad news cycle, right? But now he really is losing control of his supporters. The only person on the right who seems really happy about it is Trump's former mega donor and co-president, world's richest man, Elon Musk. All summer, Musk has openly warred with Trump, including teasing the creation of a new third party, saying in a now deleted post that Trump was in the Epstein files. Today, Musk spent much of his time on social media stirring the Epstein pot, posting that so many powerful people want that list suppressed, and we were all told the list was going to be released, and that Trump should just release the files and point out which part is the hoax. When the political betting site Polymarket posted its users believe there was a 100% chance Donald Trump was named in the Epstein files, Musk replied with a post of his own, quote, that is a high level of confidence.
Well, what started out as a slight divide among President Trump's supporters, MAGA supporters, is now an all-out rift. And he is the one who's saying good riddance. He's literally said to his own MAGA supporters, his own base, good riddance. If you want to keep going on and on about this Epstein file and about the names that you think are associated with Jeffrey Epstein, get lost. I don't want your support. This is what he posted on Truth Social this morning. And he's trying to lay it all on the Democrats. He says, these scams and hoaxes are all the Democrats are good at. It's all they have. And my past supporters have bought into this blank hook, line, and sinker. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success, because I don't want their support anymore.
Well, that would include Marjorie Taylor Greene. That would include Tim Burchett. That would include a lot of people
on the Hill who are saying this.
And he can't afford to lose more than one or two of them. So this is crazy. So he doubles down in the Oval Office today. And of course, the reporters are asking him about this because this has become the issue. It is the centerpiece of what's going on right now.
He doesn't have a policy. Some lunatic around the desk had a policy. Whoever operated the auto pen had a policy, which is, by the way, I think the biggest scandal. That's the scandal they should be talking about, not Jeffrey Epstein. The scandal you should be talking about is the auto pen, because I think it's the biggest scandal, one of them in American history.
So I just want to kind of reiterate what we talked about yesterday. I've talked to people who have seen this file, and A, there is no list. B, there are a million names in it. Because Jeffrey Epstein bragged about all the people he knew, billionaires, movie stars, music stars, politicians. Fidel Castro is in this. Donald Trump's name is mentioned more than a few times, I'm told, by two different people. And nothing untoward, though. I mean, there are so many names of just people who knew the guy, but there's nothing untoward. But I'm wondering, is this, he just doesn't want that, even though
he wants nothing out. And maybe it's not even, who knows, maybe it's not only about himself. Could be about some of those other people.
Could be about some of the other people.
He doesn't want it out.
That's
but
right.
He's got a huge problem on his hands now. And I don't know what happens to MAGA. Let's bring in someone who we know is definitely watching this very closely, our good friend Michael Knowles from The Michael Knowles Show. Goodbye, MAGA? What's going on, Michael?
Yeah.
It's not quite at the level of goodbye, MAGA, but I think this is the most serious threat to the MAGA coalition that we've seen in the last 6 months. I don't know, maybe the last 6 years. And the reason is actually something we talked about last time I was on the show, which is I said, look, guys, I don't think anybody is more frustrated about the Epstein stuff than Trump is, because there are all sorts of reasons why the government might not release all the names of the people associated with Epstein. For one, it's a pretty far-flung list, as you mentioned, Harvey. It includes Fidel Castro. So, there are a lot of people involved. So for reasons of everything from avoiding defamation all the way up to, I don't know, unraveling the world order because of the prime ministers and royalty and serious political leaders who associated with Epstein, for any of those reasons, the government might say, okay, we're not just going to publish all of these files. That said, I don't think that what MAGA wants is just to publish all the files willy-nilly. I don't think that's a top priority. Some people say that, but I think what we really want is justice.
But what is justice? What is justice?
Justice would be a prosecution of some of the bad people. Justice would be political consequences if we're talking about agencies of our government or even foreign governments. Justice would be some consequence where this doesn't just get brushed under the rug. And I'm sure Trump would like that too. Trump was interviewed in front of Maurine 1, and he was going off about Epstein and how annoying it is that people are still asking about it. And he said, but look, I want anything that is credible to be released too. And so I think that he's actually where a lot of people are.
Eye of the beholder there.
Right.
The word credible.
Right. He's saying that
Sure.
is almost like he's setting up that nothing's going to come out, and that's the reason nothing's going to come out. Or if it all comes out, he's already sort of saying, well, a lot of it isn't credible.
He's setting that stage because he says, look, some of this is a Democrat hoax. The Democrats were compiling a lot of these files. Yeah, fair enough. The real reason I think that Trump is pushing this at this moment, though, is because it's now made it to the halls of Congress. So you've got Democrats in Congress have finally become the pro-disclosure party, along with Trump's political enemies in the Republican Party.
Right.
Guys like Thomas Massey, who Trump wants to primary. So
But even
supporters.
Yeah, even the allies.
His staunch allies
Sure.
are
Yeah.
also saying this.
But I think the allies, that's key, because a lot of people who are in MAGA are reading that Truth Social post and they're saying, wait, he's telling me he doesn't want my support? I thought he's a man of the people. You know, no one's ordinary and we're all in, I'm here for you or whatever. I think that Truth Social post might as well have been written to Capitol Hill. I think it's written to guys like Thomas Massey, maybe to Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. And I think he's saying, hey, you guys who are supposed to be my supporters on Capitol Hill, get your priorities in order and talk about the things I want you to talk about. But unfortunately, it's not going to go away, because the Epstein story is a symbol of corruption that long predates Donald Trump. I think that's part of why he's irritated he has to talk about it. But I think the government has to communicate in a way that conveys to people that justice is going to be done, and that, God forbid, the MAGA movement's not going to be complicit in an injustice.
If there was an issue he didn't want people talking about, he'd have the shiny object that he would talk about, and everybody would divert away from the one thing, like with Signalgate. This time he's tried with, the real conspiracy is the auto pen, and nobody's buying that. So this was the tried and true thing. It has failed. Nobody is saying, let's talk about the auto pen instead. I mean, it's just showing that he doesn't know where to go on this thing, because he's never been in this territory before politically.
Well, the reason this issue is different than the other ones is because, first of all, it began with conservatives trying to shine a light on this, implicating the Clintons and other friends of Epstein. The Democrats at that time were downplaying it and denying it. Then it's starting to flip here. And because it's gone on for so long, this is an issue that has been in the public imagination for 10 years. And people who are really paying close attention to this, it's more like 15 or 20 years. So you can't just turn away from it willy-nilly without giving some answers. And so this is why I've said the whole time, I am a plan truster. I don't think Trump is doing anything deceitful or unjust or anything here. You know, I don't think he's implicated in the files, as you point out, Harvey. But I think the government needs to come up with a better answer than, actually, there isn't a list, even though we said there was a list. And there is jail cell video, even though previously it was said there was not video. But some of the video is missing, and never mind, move along. That's not going to work. I think the Trump administration is on the right side of this thing. I think they just need to give a more persuasive explanation to people.
On the right side?
Agree, but Michael, you said the government needs to come up with a better explanation. You know who the government is.
It's him.
It's not the Department of Justice.
It's not Pam Bondi.
It's not Pam Bondi. It is President Trump. So you can't say that and then try and then
DOJ. So when the DOJ comes out and says there's no client list, that's not persuasive.
Michael, are we going to say that the DOJ isn't the president in this administration?
He's knocked that wall down.
Is separate from the DOJ.
He's knocked that wall down.
Trump is the singular figure. There's no question about that. But Trump is a better communicator than some of his lieutenants have been during all of this. And so I think, like today, when he comes out and says,
but not doing a good job this time.
That's
not doing a good job, Michael, in terms of communicating it. He can't.
They're not.
Pam Bondi isn't saying a thing without Trump knowing it.
And Trump
cannot tell me that.
Trump came out yesterday and said, Epstein file, boring. I mean, boring?
Look, I think that's a better explanation than the DOJ gave, that's for sure. There are plenty of reasons not to disclose an uncorroborated file that includes the names of half the people on Earth. There are plenty of good reasons to do that, but I just don't think people are going to let the Epstein issue go. And likewise, I don't think the Epstein issue should derail the Trump administration. There must be some better way of messaging it to convey the truth of what's going on, and then also focus on all the big accomplishments, which is all Trump wants to focus on.
But he's in more trouble now because of this than he's been in his tenure.
It's not going to be brushed aside. There are plenty of good explanations that the government can give that will make Trump look good and his enemies look bad. But I think right now he sees that the Democrats and his political enemies in the Republican Party are seizing on this, and I think they got to kill this political campaign in the cradle, because it could be a problem.
All right, Michael, I have a feeling you're going to have something more to say about this on your show. So everyone, check out the Michael Knowles Show. It airs weekdays on the Daily Wire Plus. So we will talk to you next week.
Thanks, Michael.
Good to see you guys. See you later.
All right.
See you later. Wow.
Interesting when you can say the government is something separate from President Trump, but usually they say he is the government.
Well, he is the government. We're taking a break.
All right. When we come back, some big news for Pete Davidson. Life is about to change dramatically for him. We will explain why when we come back.
All right, you guys, Jeffrey Epstein. Where should we begin? There is so much happening right now. Also in the background, a lot of chatter. There's very little fact. You know what I've realized about the media? The strategy is very 1984. They want to make our reality sort of this ever present. There is no such thing as history. You're supposed to forget yesterday, the week before, the years before. And then whatever they tell us in this moment, you should accept as truth. At the same time, they're totally perverting our focus. There's so many social media apps. Everyone has ADHD. Who in the future is going to have enough focus to read books and to produce reports or to even listen long enough to be focused on a podcast series? I would say that we better strike while the iron is still hot then. So welcome to an introduction of the Epstein Files. I'm excited to be teaming up again with Xavier Poussard. Incredible work. He has worked on this forthcoming book regarding Jeffrey Epstein for years, just as he was working on the Brigitte Macron story. And of course, this is a story that impacts France, definitely the United States, as we're going through what we're going through right now, being gaslit at a very executive level. It impacts certainly Israel, Ukraine, Russia. Everybody is going to get a feature in this story. And I'll tell you this right at the top. The Jeffrey Epstein story really is one that begins with Robert Maxwell. Yes, Robert Maxwell, for those of you that are not aware, is Ghislaine Maxwell's father. He was, while he was still alive, that is, considered to be the Rupert Murdoch of the left. He controlled a media empire that stretched from England to Israel to France and beyond. He was mostly famous as the owner of Mirror Group newspapers, that is the publisher of the Daily Mirror. He also owned the Maxwell Communication Corporation, Pergamon Press, Nimbus Records, that was the first British record company to release CDs. Also the American branch of Macmillan Publishers, we should talk about that down the line. He was a shareholder of MTV Europe, et cetera, you name it. He was also a shareholder of the French media group TF1. He was very much involved with the French elite. We'll discuss that as well in a later episode. He was even a Labour member of Parliament in the House of Commons from 1964 to 1970. We could go on and on and on, but you get the point. He was a very big fish, almost untouchable, really. And I'm going to tell you how he came to be that big fish because it's really interesting. You see, Robert Maxwell was born not Robert Maxwell at all. You're going to notice that a lot as we go through this series. It's a very sophisticated network of what I would refer to as name laundering. A lot of name laundering. You could be one person here, you're somebody else there. And to this day, Robert Maxwell's birth name is still misreported. If you look it up, it'll probably tell you his birth name was John Ludwig or Jan Ludwig. That's what the media says, but that was just another one of his aliases. His real birth name was Abraham Labi Hawk, okay? And he was born in a town called Silos Latina, which is today a part of Ukraine. I gotta tell you guys, Ukraine just keeps consistently coming up in all of my research and it's starting to freak me out a little bit. Anyways, at the time that he was born, it was 1923. That was the year. And that town was a part of Czechoslovakia. And in terms of who was in his family, his known family, by the way, he's apparently a distant relative of Eli Wiesel. Now, this guy is very controversial. We don't have that much time to get into it. We'll have to save his story for another day. But he essentially becomes the face of Auschwitz. He published tons of literature about what happened while he was at Auschwitz as a survivor. And then other survivors of Auschwitz said he was making it all up and he was never there. And then they couldn't find him in the records. And they said, I mean, this is another Auschwitz survivor, that he was stealing the identity of another person who was there, but it wasn't him. It gets crazy. I only mention that because you will again see that identity crisis could have been the name of this series. It seems to be a running theme in this family. And also identity crisis is a running theme with anything that involves Israel. Anyways, back to Abraham or Jan or Robert. The story goes that he is from a Hasidic family. He studied at the yeshiva and his parents wanted him to become a rabbi. At the age of 12, he joined what's known as the Batar movement. And that is a young Jewish nationalist movement, a nationalist Zionist movement. And if you're wondering where that Batar is actually a location, you can see where this is going, in Palestine, present-day Palestine in the West Bank. From there, it is said that he joined the Czechoslovak army, and then he was in exile, a refugee that apparently participated in the French campaign. Now, I'm saying apparently because he has presented himself, Robert Maxwell, no less than 5 different versions of what his activities were from 1939 to 1940. What we do know is that he was arrested as a communist agitator, and he was among the Czech refugees that made it into the English camps. And then the story gets kind of weird because despite being a communist agitator, he was allowed to join England's Pioneer Corps. That's the only British unit that was open to foreigners. He then begins using 2 other names. Those 2 names are Ivan Leslie du Maurier, and also he uses the name Leslie Jones, okay? He's assigned at that moment to work in Paris, and that is when he meets Ghislaine Maxwell's future mother. Her name is Elizabeth Maynard, and he marries her on March 14th, 1945 at a Parisian town hall. And when he married her, I should be clear, his name was suddenly Robert Maxwell. He uses the pseudonym when he's married, Robert Maxwell, and that's what he's going to use into the future. So at the moment, our family chart looks like this, okay? Robert Maxwell, here he is, AKA John Ludwig, Abraham Libby Hawk, Ivan Leslie du Maurier, and Leslie Jones. Nothing to see here, folks. Anyways, he then gets stationed in Berlin as a liaison officer with the Red Army. And the task that he gets is quite significant, okay? They have tasked him, this is the British intelligence agencies, to partner with a German publisher. The publisher was Springer. And he's partnering with them under the guise of selling scientific journals that were published under the Third Reich, but therefore were banned from export around the world. So he's teaming up with them. I can move this product for you. And then in 1951, just a few years later, he takes control of that German publishing house, Butterworth Springer. Again, he is still very much focused on these scientific journals that were published under the Third Reich. Why are they so focused? Why do they want these scientific journals? It might make sense as we get further into the story. Anyways, Butterworth Springer then gets renamed the Pergamon Press. And you should know that this was not out of his own interest in publishing. He didn't go about this because he wanted to be some big publishing magnate. It was actually because he was funded to do this by an extremely powerful family, by extremely powerful people. Like I said, this was an MI6 intelligence operation that was funded by Sir Charles Hambro. He is the director of the Bank of England. Sir Charles Hambro was from one of the most prominent families of the British banking establishment. It is the British banking establishment then, we can say, that had an interest in this publications, whatever Germany was publishing at this time under the Third Reich, and that Hambro headed the special operations during the Second World War. In essence, I'm going to make it very clear, Robert Maxwell was just an intermediary, okay? And the British decided that they needed him to be an intermediary elsewhere, also in Russia. So in 1954, they send Maxwell to Russia, and he puts forth the idea to the Russians that, hey, I could publish and translate for you Russian scientific articles. Again, this interest in science. Germany, Russia, you're going in there, and they then give him access to Russia and its scientific secrets. I think we can connect the dots here. They were also interested in German scientific secrets. This guy's going over there pretending to be friends, and he's translating stuff, presumably for England, but actually no, because here's where it gets interesting. England, or people within at the tippy top, were getting quite suspicious about Robert. They think, I don't actually believe he's working for us. I think he's actually working on behalf of Russia. I think he's working for the KGB. And according to the British Foreign Office, the files that have since become public and were published in 2003, they started to believe and find out, they are able to confirm that he was funded by Russia. So they kick him out of Pergamon Publishing and they allow some American guy to run the company instead. Now, on the KGB side, they eventually do acknowledge that he was, in fact, a very high-up Soviet agent, but he was so high up that even the high-up Soviet spies were not allowed to deal with him directly. And so his allegiance to the Soviet cause was also questioned. The heck was this guy truly loyal to? Eventually, it would become apparent that he was not loyal to the crown. He was not loyal to the Soviets. It was actually Israel that held his true allegiance. As early as 1948, he played a major role in the decision of the anti-Stalinist Czechoslovakian government to arm the Zionist paramilitaries. Right? He personally participated in the smuggling of aircraft parts during the 1948 war that led to the creation of the State of Israel. So the man who the British intelligence agencies described eventually as a Zionist that was loyal only to Israel. He was throughout his career a prominent Mossad agent. It totally makes sense given his earlier association with the Betar, that Zionist group, after his parents wanted him to become a rabbi. We learn more about Robert Maxwell through the lens of Victor Ostrovsky. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, it is because he is the man who notoriously defected from the Mossad. And if you don't know him, you should become familiar with his work. He felt that he had to defect because their activity was fundamentally unconscionable, and he ended up writing a book revealing Mossad secrets. The book is entitled By Way of Deception. He claims, by the way, that that is the Mossad motto. By way of deception, thou shalt do war. He was confirmed, by the way, as an Israeli agent, so he's not some random crazy guy publishing a book, and he was trying to alert the public to a lot of their shady tactics. And I'll just give you one example of that. Here's what Victor Ostrovsky had to say about the Mossad.
I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? You know, Pete Makaki, we used to call him. Yeah, which is Pete the cockroach. Because he makes a lot of noise and you can't get rid of him. So what you do is you get in touch with a guy in the station in New York or in the station in Washington. You say, tell the guys at B'nai B'rith to label him. And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite, because that's what we say he is. And that's one stain you cannot wash. Now, it shames me as a Jew to tell you that, but that's the fact, and it's wrong.
Very honest, we've been seeing a lot of that as of late, as we start asking questions, meaningful questions that we deserve the answers to, particularly as it deals with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Anyways, Victor claims that regarding Robert Maxwell, quote, the Mossad financed many of its operations in Europe with money that was stolen from Maxwell's newspaper's pension fund. They got their hands on the funds almost as soon as Maxwell bought the Mirror, his newspaper group, with money that was loaned to him by the Mossad. I'm sorry, just to slow that down and make sure you understand, what he is saying is the Mossad gave him the money to go ahead and buy the Mirror Group Publishing. And the moment that he got it, they took all of the pension fund money and they spent it so that they could fulfill clearly Israel's interests. Robbing pension funds to support Israel, okay? I think what we can refer to then, this whole, he's pretending that he's a publishing magnate and he's in Germany and he's in Russia and now he's opening all of these businesses in the UK, we can refer to this strategy, this repeat strategy, as the Midas touch, right? We saw this in the story of Emmanuel Macron, a person that's just kind of selected, given a historical background. Suddenly we think that this person's really powerful and amazing and intelligent. It's pretty much the exact same strategy here. Robert Maxwell has somebody giving him money behind him, and he's growing more and more powerful in business. Now, in return for his fake status, I would say, as a publishing behemoth, the Israeli intelligence services allegedly sated Robert Maxwell's sexual appetite by supplying him with prostitutes. Again, this is a direct quote. Quote, the service maintained for blackmail services. since it was revealed that the hotel that he was staying at was actually rigged with cameras, which allowed the Mossad to acquire a small library of video footage of Maxwell in sexually compromising situations. So even though he's working for Israel, Israel is taking out an insurance policy. They're recording him. He's got a thing for prostitutes, and they've got him just in case he gets any ideas. Which, by the way, knowing that maybe he did know they had this catalog of evidence against him since they were the ones supplying the prostitutes, that might explain why Robert Maxwell was so loyal to Israel that he even ratted out his fellow Israelis, or other Israelis, I should say, who tried to do the right thing. So let me tell you this. There was this guy, Mordecai Vanunu. He was a nuclear technician, an Israeli, but he was also a peace activist. He did not believe in weapons of mass destruction. So when he was working in that capacity and discovered that Israel was in fact building weapons of mass destruction related to the extremely controversial Dimona nuclear facilities, right? The nuclear facilities that for a long time they claimed they totally didn't have, he tried everything in his capacity to alert the world to what they were building. He took pictures, and then he took the information that he had, unfortunately, to Robert Maxwell's Mirror publications. And rather than doing what he should have done as a British citizen, sensing a threat to the UK, a threat and saying, hey, they are building a nuclear stockpile, he alerted the Israelis. Robert Maxwell decided to take that information and alert the Israelis that this guy was defecting. And what did the Israelis do? Well, they lured Vanunu to Italy. And then they drugged him. And then they abducted him. And then they secretly transported him to Israel and ultimately just convicted him in a trial that was held behind closed doors. Yeah. The only democracy in the Middle East. Vanunu then spent 18 years